Yeah, so I hang out. I'm usually here in the mornings from like 9 a.m. to like 2 or 3. So by the time you guys are in your practice, I'm usually out here. But I hang out. Yeah, so just to get started, a little PowerPoint. Okay. Yes, the conjugate method. So what we're doing today is we are going to be learning about what the conjugate method, what it is. My name is Spencer. I'm Spencer Humpherys. Like I said, I work here. I have been communicating with your coach about potentially doing something like this, and we made it happen. I am a certified personal trainer for the National Academy of Sports Medicine. I've been teaching college level weightlifting for the last couple of years. I've competed in amateur Ninja Warrior and powerlifting competitions. Yeah, it was pretty cool. The Ninja Warrior one, I wasn't really prepared and I ripped my hands open. It was blood everywhere.
Ouch. How far did you make it?
I took second. It was on the TV show, so don't get too excited. It was just like a regional one, so right. So it wasn't. Don't get too.
Was it the same like?
No, it was like it wasn't the TV, like no relation to the TV show. It was just a like a competition, like a regional thing. They put it together. So yeah, so that's kind of my background. I was a wrestler as well. I wrestled middle school and high school. I wrestled in Prosser. Anyone here from the CWAC? What schools? Wapato. Wapato and Afraid. I got you. Yeah, the kid from Wapato who always beat me. You might know him, Alex Vaca.
Oh yeah.
He beat me every time. He was really good. I think he took state a couple times. Yeah. So talk right into it. Any questions till now? Do you know Cole Spencer? Okay, so yeah, what we're going to be talking about today is we're going to educate you kind of on what's known as the conjugate method, how it works, how it's applied. I've got a little presentation I'm going to show you here. After that, we're going to have applied practice, which is basically I'm just going to put you through a workout and through this kind of framework. Kind of my desired outcome for what we're doing here today is I want you guys to be able to create your own weight training program. Okay. I'm not here to reinvent the wheel for you guys. I'm not here to tell you guys that you don't know anything. I was here, I saw you working out, one other guy you were working out earlier today. I'm sure you guys look like you're doing great. So yeah, I'm not here to tell you that I know everything and you don't know anything, okay? I'm just here to basically provide you with a framework that I think has some value. You can take from it what you like. Yeah, this PowerPoint will also be available to you guys. I'm going to send it to your coach, so if you want to look at it afterwards, we will. You'll have it available. Okay. So, what is the conjugate method? So, obviously, the first word in there is the word conjugate. When do we conjugate things? Right? It's a question. When do we conjugate things? Have you ever heard that word before? Or where have you heard it?
English class.
English class, right? Where you're putting two words together, right? The conjugation, can't, won't, don't. Those are all conjugations, okay? So basically the conjugate method, so to conjugate, define means to join together. So basically the conjugate method is defined as a training method. We're using different modalities, different lifts, different training ideologies, basically to all to combine to make you better and stronger, right? It was first created by the Soviets in Russia. It was adapted and popularized by a guy named Louis Simmons. Anyone ever heard of him? Has ever heard of Louis Simmons? Okay, look him up. Louis Simmons was an amazing guy, amazing coach. He established a gym in rural Ohio called Westside Barbell. They broke in over 140 world records, won Olympic gold medals. They have some crazy powerlifting totals. And so Westside Barbell was a powerlifting gym, right? But we're not really powerlifters, we're wrestlers, right? So he also has applied this to, like it says in the slide, and the NFL, rugby, combat sports, MMA, lots of different disciplines. This is a very adaptable mode of training, okay? So the basic premise is you're varying the stimuli of your body through different lifts, different variations of the same lift. So, is anyone familiar with powerlifting in here? What are the three main lifts of powerlifting?
Bench, dead, squat, push, pull.
So that's Olympic lifting, close.
Bench, dead, squat.
Bench, deadlift, and squat, okay? So for a power lifter, the Olympic lifts have a lot of benefit. I can teach you about those too if you're interested. So a power lifter is trying to put up as much weight as they can through those three main lifts, right? So they want to get as good at those three main lifts as possible. And so what they found is if you just are trying to increase your bench, and you're benching your max bench at 90%, 95% every single day for a couple months, couple weeks, whatever, you'll have an initial growth phase, but then you'll hit a plateau, right? And your growth will peter off, and you'll stop making strength gains. Okay? So what the conjugate method does is it focuses on implementing variations of those three main lifts with the idea that since you're doing all these different variations, your main lift is going to get better. Does that make sense? So the parts will be better than the whole, if that makes any sense. So examples of this, if we're sticking with the bench analogy, decline bench, floor press, incline bench, bench through bands and chains, we'll talk about that later. Varying your grips, right? Board pressing, pin pressing, there's a ton of different variations, okay? And it's all kind of focused around compound lifts. Anyone know what a compound lift is? So the definition of a compound lift is a lift that uses more than one joint, is the book definition, okay? So with the bench, right, you've got shoulders, triceps, or shoulders and elbow, right? Squat, you've got ankles, knees, and glutes, yeah?
Wait, what's the difference between compound and conjugate?
So conjugate is the way we're lifting the weight.
Okay.
So it's the reps and sets, right? So it's the amount of weight you're lifting. So a compound lift is a lift like a squat, a bench press, the Olympic lifts that you were talking about, the snatch and the clean. Those are all compound lifts because they use more than one joint.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Any questions on that?
So the compound is like grow your joints.
So the idea of a compound lift is since you're using more than one joint, you're using more of your body in general, and so it strengthens your whole body, right? There's a difference between a bodybuilder who is focused on one muscle group and optimizing a muscle group, and a power lifter or an athlete who wants to be explosive and powerful throughout their whole body, right? So a bodybuilder is going to stick to more what they call accessory movements, which is a curl or like a calf raise, right? But an athlete or a power lifter is going to want to do more of the compound lifts, bench, squat, clean and jerk, et cetera, et cetera. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Questions on that? Good, good. Ask all the questions you need. We're going to get a little technical today as far as programming, but hopefully we can keep it, hopefully you guys can still understand it. Okay. Does anyone know who these four guys across the top are? This is kind of a use and applicability case.
Kyle Snyder.
Kyle Snyder, okay. You know who the other three are?
Calvin and Matthew.
Not Calvin and Matthew.
How'd you know?
Okay, so Kyle Snyder, what do you guys know about Kyle Snyder?
Massive beast.
He started like a lightweight and then he could float.
Fucking
He was never a lightweight, I'll tell you that.
Oh.
So, youngest Olympic gold medalist the U.S. has ever had. He's only 26. He can sled press like 1,000 pounds. He's a beast. 1,600 pounds. You must have seen an updated video. This guy
1,600 pounds.
Of what?
on a sled press, you just put it on a sled.
Oh.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's
So
like
this-
a car, dude.
This is Logan Stieber. He was a 4-time national champ. He was on the world team. This is Colin Moore. He was ranked #1 going into the COVID season, and then he lost his senior season, so he didn't. He was an All-American at the Division I level, but he never won it. But he is on the. He's been active internationally. This is Reese Humphrey. He was an international level wrestler and an Olympian. I don't remember if he ever won a title, but really good wrestler. Okay, so all these guys came out of Ohio State, right? You guys remember where I said that gym was started? The West Side Barbell?
So we're just.
Yeah, Ohio.
Oh.
Yeah. So these two guys right here, this guy's name is Corey Gregory, and this guy's name is Dustin Myers. So this guy went to West Side Barbell, learned the conjugate method, taught it to this guy, Dustin Myers, who was the strength coach for the Buckeyes, the Ohio State Buckeyes in 2015, when they won their first team title, NCAA Division I team title, okay? Of these guys, Kyle Snyder and Logan Stever were on that team. Also Nathan Tomasello, if any of you guys know who that is. These two guys weren't on the team, but they've trained extensively with Coach Myers. So just a little bit of a proof for you guys that this, I'm not making this up, this is the real thing. This does exist. Really good example right here, okay? How much time do we have? I only have 45 minutes to get through this, so we got boom. Okay, so the basic workout structure, it's not a whole lot different from what you might see normally, okay? You have a warm-up, okay, and the important thing about this warm-up is that it's a dynamic warm-up, not a static warm-up. Does anyone know the difference between dynamic and static stretching?
Yes.
What is it?
Dynamic stretching is like moving while you're stretching, I guess, and then static stretching is just like sitting still.
Yeah, so, you know, a static stretch is just reaching over, touching your toes and sitting there for 30 seconds. An active stretch is like skipping or whatever, right? Okay, so you also would incorporate maybe some light weights in there. So if you're gonna work your chest or your back, you might do some light rows or whatever, okay? You're gonna spend about 15-20 minutes on your main lift, and about 15-20 minutes on your accessory / complementary lifts, okay? These are gonna be lifts that work the same main muscle group as your main lift. So if your main lift for the day is a squat, you might be working glutes and hammies and quads and calves with your accessory lifts, okay? You want about 2 to 4. I think about 3 is the sweet spot, okay? More than that, and it starts to take a long time. 2 doesn't feel like enough, okay? And then to finish up the workout, we have what's called GPP, General Physical Preparedness, or core work, okay? This is all stuff to just make sure you're in shape generally. This can also be conditioning. So farmer walks, pushing a sled, climbing ropes, planks. You guys know what hypers are, reverse hypers? So a hyperextension with your back is just this movement right here, or reverse hyper is where you're on something and you do that movement. It's not ideal, but that's what it looks like. What?
No, I'm just saying we have some equipment for that.
Yeah. So this is basically what the workout's gonna look like. Not too crazy. Any questions on this? So that format's pretty standard, pretty regular. So this is where it starts to get a little hairy, okay? So I've got a little laser pointer. So inherently, the conjugate method takes place over 4 days, okay? So you've got day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. In between each day, ideally, you're gonna have a day of rest. Rest does not necessarily mean you sit on your butt all day, but you do active recovery, okay? You go run, or you sit in the sauna or whatever, okay? So Monday and Tuesday, or Monday, Wednesday, depending, day 1, day 2, you have what are called max effort days, okay? So that means you're working up to the heaviest weight you can on that day. And day 1 is lower body, day 2 is upper body. Okay? So this doesn't necessarily mean you're maxing out every single day. Okay? You might work up to a 3-rep max, you might work up to a 4 or 5-rep max. Okay? It just depends. And that's for both day 1 and day 2. So when we get into upper body on day 2, now when you think upper body, a lot of times you think of curls and bench press. But since we're wrestlers, we do a lot of pulling movements, right? When you're in a double, you've got to pull that leg in. When you're in a cradle or whatever, you got to cinch that in really tight, okay? So when you're programming and when you're making these workouts, we want a 2-to-1 ratio of pulling to pushing movements. Does that make sense? So if over the course of 3 weeks, we have 3 of these max effort upper body days, how many are going to be back days and how many of them are going to be chest days? Who knows? Simple math.
2 chest, 1 head.
Other way around.
2 back, 1 chest.
2 back, 1 chest, okay? So we want to keep that ratio of more posterior exercises, posterior meaning your back, to 1 anterior exercise. We can't completely neglect the front side of our body because that leads to injury risk, but you do want to focus on those pulling muscles, okay? So day 3 and 4 are a little bit different, okay? This is speed work, okay? So you're focusing on moving a weight that is a little bit less than your 1 rep max, about 50 to 60% typically, maybe venturing up into 70. And you're gonna do it for a lot of sets, but pretty few reps, okay? And you're gonna focus on moving that weight as fast as you can. That makes sense? Okay, so we're looking at 10 sets, 2 to 3 very, very quick explosive reps. And the point of that is to start to learn and teach your body to generate power. As wrestlers, that's obviously very important. Who can think of a scenario in wrestling where you need to be quick and powerful?
Stand up.
Stand up. Give me another one.
Shots.
On a shot. What's another one?
Snaps.
Snap downs. Good. Okay. So when we're benching or we're squatting, we're doing these movements explosively. We're teaching our body, and we're developing neuromuscular pathways within our body to be able to react fast and with force. Okay. There's a pattern of your nervous system, right, controls how you move. So when your brain tells your muscles to do something, there's a little bit of latency, there's a little bit of a delay, right? And so by training speed work, that makes that movement more efficient. You can do it faster, you can generate more force, okay? So 2 max effort days, 1 upper, 1 lower, 2 dynamic effort or speed days, 1 upper, 1 lower. Does that make sense there?
Yeah.
Okay. These are just some examples, maybe day 1, maybe a max effort lower body day, looking at 1 by 3, 85% of our 1 rep max. That's your top set, that's your heaviest set, and then you go into your working sets of 5 sets of 5 at X% of that. Yeah.
I was gonna ask, can you potentially get strong even though you don't use heavy weights?
So to get strong, you do need to use heavy weight. That's just kind of the reality of it. So what you can do is when you do lightweight for higher reps, you're gonna get a bigger muscle, but it's not gonna be a stronger muscle necessarily. Does that make sense? It'll look big, it'll look impressive, but the long story short, if you want to get strong, you need to use heavy weight. Yeah, does that make sense? Any other questions on that? It's a very commonly held misconception. A lot of people are scared of lifting heavy weight. It just takes practice, just like anything else. Practice putting yourself under heavy weight for long periods of time, you'll get used to it even better.
Right, so if I were to cut weight, would it be good for me to lift heavy too?
So we'll get into that. So here's the thing with cutting weight. I knew this was going to come up. I went through it. Lifting weights is something that you should do in season. You absolutely should do in season. You absolutely should lift heavy in season, but you need to be smart about it, obviously. Because here's the thing. I would venture so far as to say that you're never going to miss weight because you had a workout the day before in the gym, you lifted heavy, right? You miss weight because of your diet, okay? It comes down to your caloric input and output. So you can still lift heavy and get strong and make weight. If you put on enough muscle to go up a weight class, and that's muscle and not fat, that's a good thing, okay? Wrestlers have this mindset, and I know because I had it too. I cut a lot of weight in high school, that they need to lose weight, and it's just not optimal, okay? We'll get more into cutting weight later. We'll go over that a little more. Okay, so progression of this program, okay? The lifts increase in intensity over a 3-week wave, and then another movement is chosen, okay? So for 3 weeks, you pick a movement, okay? So let's say for lower body, we're gonna pick deadlift, and we're gonna do the sumo variation of a deadlift, okay? Sumo, meaning your legs are a little bit further spread apart, your hands are in between your legs, and you pull the weight like this, okay? That's a deadlift we're choosing. For upper body, say we're picking just a regular bench press, okay? So you're gonna do that, and you're gonna increase in intensity every week for 3 weeks. And then you're gonna choose a new variation of the lift, and go for another 3 weeks, and for perpetuity. Does that make sense? So 3-week waves of increasing intensity, and then you choose another movement, right? So our next movement might be just a standard conventional deadlift, okay? Hands outside the knees right underneath your hips, and maybe an incline bench press, okay? And as far as the dynamic effort speed work goes, the same thing, okay? It's gonna increase in intensity over 3 weeks, and then choose a new movement, okay? A lot to take in. Any questions on this so far? Yeah.
I had my old wrestling coach. He told me that like deadlift, it wasn't beneficial. And
beneficial for us unless like we like actually competed for them?
So Eddie Hall is actually the guy who said that first, and Eddie Hall is the world record deadlift holder. He's an incidentally power lifter, okay? And I'm not gonna say that that's inherently untrue, but if you think about it, what are the muscles you're using when you're deadlifting? Grip, okay, you gotta hold on to the bar. Your lower body, okay? You're exploding your hips forward, you're going into hip extension, okay? So hip extension is when your hips go from here to here. What does that look like? Looks like a sprawl, okay? A good wrestler has heavy hips, strong hips. That means they're gonna have heavy hip extension. They're gonna be very, very strong in this movement, okay? Deadlift trains that movement, okay? So if you're only training deadlift to increase your deadlift as much as possible, yeah, that's true. If you're only trying to get a heavy deadlift, yeah. Can it help wrestling? 100%. Absolutely can help in wrestling. I would say a sumo style deadlift, where your legs are spread a little bit further apart, your hands are in between, you pull it like this, is going to be even better for a wrestler because it's more glute dominant, and you need those glutes to sprawl and create hip pressure here. Okay? Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Any other questions on any of this, or just anything in general? Cool. Okay. Training progression, we kind of already covered that. So a lot of times what you'll see when you're doing speed work is you're going to do it through a band. Okay, and what that means is it'll look something like this. Okay, a lot of times speed work will look like you're doing it through a band or through chains. Okay, and so if you want to get really particular with your programming, you want to get really granular and really dialed in on what you want and getting stronger. There's a way where you can figure out exactly how much band tension you're using, and so you can increase that. So for your speed day, you might say you're doing 50% of your 1 rep max plus 25 of that in bands. So say you can bench, just for argument's sake, 100 pounds, okay? You would do 50-pound bench press, 50 pounds on the bar, and then 25 pounds worth of bands, okay? Now, bands disclaimer, this is tricky. Figuring out the tension is tricky. What they tell you to do is they tell you to, if you're doing a deadlift through bands, like that picture I showed you, they tell you to get the band set, grab the bar, stand up, do it on a scale, and then subtract your body weight and the bar weight, and it's a lot of math, right? That sounds confusing, and it's kind of like the only people who really get really into this, the band tension, are like I said, those who are going to get really, really dialed in. So just to let you know that if you want to do this, if you want to get really, really advanced in speed work, and that's going to really help your power, then you can learn how to set band tension. There's lots of videos on that one that'll help you with that. Okay. So yeah. Questions on progressions? We kind of already covered that in the previous slide.
We're gonna get bands in on you.
So I think John, the athletic director, is working on that. I was talking to him today, and I think he put in a $15,000 purchase order for stuff for the gym. So you're gonna get some new toys. Okay. Variations. Okay. So this is going back to what we talked about at the beginning, right? The idea of the conjugate method is you're using lots of different variations of lifts to get stronger at one main lift. Okay. And there's infinite combinations. Okay. The highest level of elite powerlifters that use this at like Westside Barbell and Elite FTS and stuff like that, they won't do the same variation for a year. Right? There's so many ways to vary this, okay? So just to kind of illuminate how many different ways you can vary your lifts. Let's take the deadlift, okay? So I already talked about 2 different variations, okay? You've got sumo with a wide base, you've got conventional with a narrower base, okay? Then you've got a couple different kinds of grips. You've got alternating grip, you've got double overhand, you've got a snatch grip, which is further out to the sides, and then trap bar. You guys know what trap bar is? It's the one that like goes around you.
The hex bar.
Yeah, the hex bar. Yeah. So those are, how many is that? Like 4 different grips to choose from. Each one has pros and cons. For example, with an alternating grip, you're going to be able to hold more weight with your hands because of the way the bar rolls into your grip. But if you have a double overhand grip, you're not going to be able to hold as much weight because it's just going to roll out your fingers because your fingers are what's holding it. Okay? So those are things to think about when you're programming. Range of motion. okay? You can just do it off the floor. You can stand on something and deadlift it so the range of motion is even further, so you have to bend over more. You can do a pin pull, so you're pulling it off the raised platform, and you can add bands or chains, okay? I did the math, and that's something like 25 different variations of just the deadlift, okay? And those are just the basic ones, okay? So you can go through all those, and you'll have plenty of material to work. Just with what's on this slide, you have like 6 months worth of conjugate programming. Okay? Any questions on variations or why we do them or what they might look like?
On heavy days, when you do like alternating and then you land it, you do double over.
So that's where, so not necessarily. So maybe you want to get better grip strength, right? And so you want to improve that variation. So on a heavy day, you might have that double overhand grip, and you might not feel it as much in your glutes and legs the next day, but you're going to feel it in your hands. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So it just depends on what you're targeting. But every single one of these lifts and every single one of these variations you could do on a heavy day, push it up to all the way up to 1 rep max. And it's going to be different for each lift, right? For just a straight alternated grip sumo deadlift, I can deadlift way more than I can conventional with double overhand grip. Okay? And that's going to be the same for just about everybody. Okay, so these are just to get you thinking about what some of these variations might look like and how we do them. And I've got some pictures. So yeah, this is kind of more what I was talking about. You've got the sumo on over here on the side. He's got his feet spread apart. He's got that double overhand grip. Hook grip is also another one. Has anyone ever done a hook grip? So you close your thumb in underneath your fingers like this. It's a little painful, it takes some getting used to, but it's really, really strong. Okay. So there's some deadlift variations. There's that deficit deadlift that I talked about. See how he's lifting off of a raised platform, increases the range of motion, makes it a longer lift. And here's a rack pull. Okay. He's pulling it off of a raised platform, so the range of motion isn't as much, but maybe he's working on trying to get stronger with those hips. He's trying to really just work on blocking that out and going into that hip extension. So those are deadlift variations. So this is what you'd see on your speed day. Again, this is you're doing it through bands or chains. Now, you don't necessarily have to do banded or chained lifts to have a true speed day. Okay, you can just do it, 65, 70% of your 1 rep max or 50%, and still do it for the same rep and set scheme where you're doing 8 or 9 sets of about 3 reps. Okay, this is an absolutely necessary, especially if you're a beginner, or if we don't have any equipment. Okay. Squat variations, front, back, Zercher. We're going to be doing the Zercher squat variation after this. Has anyone ever done that? Where you hold in your elbows. So you've done it. Okay. So this is the best variation for a wrestler, in my opinion. What does that look like to you? That looks like a throw, a shot. You've got that. This is like the exact same position you're in on like a shot. You're going down, you're coming up with that, right? So that's the best variation for a wrestler, in my opinion. Box squat. That's again to increase power, because what you're doing is you lose all your kinetic energy because you sit down on the box and then you stop and then you pop up, right? So you lose kind of the elasticity that's inherently in your muscles. So just another variation. Okay, so into more of the wrestler-specific exercise selection. So these are kind of the lifts I would focus on as wrestlers if I were programming my own weight training regimen. Okay. So these are a lot of times variations on stuff you already know how to do or have seen. It's just optimized for wrestling. Okay. So at the top we've got the sumo deadlift. We kind of already talked about that. You've got wider base, so it's more hip and glute centric. You're going into that hip extension, helps for sprawls. Eccentric cheat curls. So you don't know what that might look like. What I'm talking about. Yeah. So why do you think that might be valuable to a wrestler? To be able to just huck it up, right? Doesn't really matter how you get it up, and then slowly let that down. Why do you think that might be valuable to a wrestler?
Control.
Control. Okay. When you're in on a shot, is that guy just gonna let you have his leg? No, he's gonna try and stretch you out. Okay. So resisting that motion of letting your arms be stretched is great, and that applies to a cradle. It applies to a shot. It applies to throws, riding, anything. Okay. So that eccentric motion, where you're going really, really slow on the eccentric portion, develops that power and that control in those muscles. Okay. Again, the Zercher squat, we talked about that. Mimics the finishing position on like a blast up or a throw. A good morning. Does anyone know what a good morning is?
Yeah.
Okay. So that works your lower.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. So that works out your lower back. Okay. When does your lower back get tired when you're wrestling?
Stance.
So let's pull on your head for 6 minutes. It'll sort of turn your lower back. Okay. So that'll help your stance. A dumbbell row, just off of a box or a bench, just right here. Okay. That allows for full improvement of your back muscles, your lats. Again, as a wrestler, you pull a lot. You do a lot of pulling and holding. Okay. Dumbbell iso press. We'll talk about that later. Okay, core exercises. How many of you guys like to do sit-ups? How many of you have done them a lot? Okay. So you should never do a sit-up ever again. Okay. Here's the thing. There's a study done by a guy named Dr. Stuart McGill.
Can I get that in writing?
Now I'll tell your coach. So there's been lots of studies done. This was kind of the flagship one. A guy named Dr. Stuart McGill, who found that when you're doing a sit-up that places excessive stress on your lumbar spine. Okay, your spine really isn't meant to bend like this. Okay, all of your core muscles that you think you're developing by doing sit-ups are really meant to stabilize your back in a straight position. Okay, you ever seen like the new wrestler who's wrestling like this? You know, on his back.
Yeah.
How fast does it take you to take it down? Half a second? Yeah. Okay? But if you see a wrestler who knows what he's doing, he's got a nice straight back, he's in a good stance, okay? The muscles in your lower back and core are designed to keep your back straight, okay? So we want to focus on planks and isometric core exercises, okay? Like a side plank, you can do them on medicine balls, there's all sorts of different variations. A good rule of thumb to go by is after you can do a plank, a strict plank for 3 minutes, do it weighted, yeah.
We're talking about like variations of sit-ups too are not good, like say like toe touches or like reverse crunches.
Yeah, so I would say anytime you're moving your back this way, it's just not great for the spine. It puts a lot of pressure on it. Now, you probably have to do a lot to hurt yourself, right? It's not gonna kill you immediately. I'm just saying that this is way more efficient and just better in every way.
Okay.
Russian bed too. The Russian twist.
Yeah.
So that's a different thing, okay? So that's rotational. So
Also,
that's a different plane of movement.
okay, I do like reverse crunches where you're hanging on by a bar on an incline bench and you're lifting your legs up.
Yeah, so I think that would be an
That's
okay
the one I do.
variation, because that's less pressure on your spine and it's more of this, right? It's less pressure on your spine. So yeah, that's definitely a valid move. Farmer carries, grip strengths, important in wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty obvious. Sled work, get a sled and push it. We don't have one here, unfortunately. But
We
you
have
can-
most of these equipment that you're talking about.
So I'm hoping that this perch order that John put in will get us most of this you can do with a dumbbell or a barbell, actually.
We don't have dumbbells.
We have dumbbells. We got
We're like
dumbbells.
this second way.
We go from like 20 to like 30 or 40.
Yeah, they're funky, but we've got dumbbells. Nordic hamstring curls, you know what those look like?
What?
So those are the ones where you're kind of on your knees and someone will like hold your ankles and you let yourself go down. You know what I'm talking about? What's up?
No. Well, I mean, I know what you're talking about. But,
Yeah.
have you heard about the knees over toe squats?
So
Are
I-
those good? Because I've been doing them.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're squatting, it's kind of an urban legend that you don't want your knees to go over your toes. You want to sit back like this. You always want your knees to go over your toes. It's a good thing to think about. Yeah.
Well, is it also true that you want, like when you squat, you want your knees to be pointing out? not
Yes,
straight?
that's another thing. That's the thing I was going to say next. Is you if you're squatting, your knees are coming in. That's like how to tear an ACL, right? That'll tear an ACL like that. If you get into that movement pattern where you're letting your knees come in, that's bad. Okay? You always when you're squatting, you always want your knees pointed out. Okay, just a general rule. Okay, and this for women is especially true. Okay, you've seen those girls who will do like the little crab walks with the band around their knees.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's really important because what that does is it strengthens your these muscles on the outside, your TFL and a couple other muscles. They're called your abductor muscles. So the female hip structure is a little bit wider than a man's, and so the angle at which your femur goes down to your knees is angled in slightly. So a lot of times if you see a girl jump, you'll see this.
I've seen girls walk.
Yeah, or they'll walk like that, okay? And that's why if you see just statistically in college and professional athletics, the percentage of ACL tears in women is 2 or 3 times as high as what you see in men. And it's because of that. It's called valgus collapse when your knees come in like that. So you always want to train your knees going out. Doesn't mean you're completely sideways, but 45 degrees is a good in between. Okay. Pull-ups, pulling motion again. Rope climbs are better. We don't have a rope, but rope climbs are better because with a pull-up, it's just a one and done movement. With a rope, you're exerting that pulling movement over time. Again, that mimics more closely what a wrestler would do because you're pulling, for longer than a second or two, right? If you're holding someone or you're in on a shot. Okay. Question on exercise? Yeah.
I have one question. So, if you can climb a rope, should you be able to pull up? Because I can climb a rope, but I can't do a pull up.
So can you climb a rope with no hands?
Oh, no hands?
Yeah, so no hands. Or sorry, no legs.
No hands.
So just with your hands. So that's kind of where you should be like, because if you're using your feet, if you're using like the little curl and over your foot, and that's not really climbing, but it's not really using your back muscles, right? So you can climb a rope and not be able to do a push-up if you know a rope climbing technique. But if you're like if you look at people who climb ropes a lot, what they'll do is they'll sit on their butt and they'll just climb like this, right? They'll just kind of be sitting in this position. I guarantee you those people can do like 1,000 pull-ups. Is that gonna answer your question? Okay, any other questions on exercise selection for wrestlers?
Oh,
Yeah,
well, can just doing like bodyweight workouts, like calisthenics, be
Absolutely.
enough?
absolutely. Yeah, that's great. This is not a comprehensive list. And what I'm trying to do, the scope of what we're trying to do in this is weight training. Calisthenics is a little bit different, obviously. That could be a whole other presentation. But as far as weights go, this is a good starting list. You can explore and expound and tweak however you want. So this is a good place to start. Okay. Any other questions or comments on this? Cool. Accessory workouts. Right, we're going back to one of those first slides. You have your main list and you have your accompanying list, correct? So on those accessory lists, what you don't want to do is just 3 sets of 10 and call it, okay? That gets pretty stale, it's not that effective, it's kind of boring, okay? So ideally what you're gonna do is mix in one of these programming modalities, and you can, again, it's not a comprehensive list, you can find more online or whatever, okay? But if you mix in something more like this, like a century set, okay, 100 reps, a drop set. Does anyone know what a drop set is?
You do a lot of weight.
Oh, yeah.
Take off a little.
And you do like 1 reps?
Yeah, exactly. So you go to failure, take off a little bit of weight, go to failure again, take off some weight, so on and so forth. Okay. Drop set. GVT, German volume training. If you want to not be able to walk, go and do 10 sets of 10 with 10 seconds of rest in between of calf raises. Okay, I did that like a couple weeks ago and it was terrible, okay? So that's a good way to get a lot of volume in quickly. A superset, are you familiar with that word? That's pretty common, okay? One exercise right after another with no rest, no rest, okay? This is kind of a CrossFit term, as many reps as possible, but for wrestlers, it's really valuable because if you're trying to do as many reps as possible, as I like to say, as many reps as perfect in a given time period, that mimics a wrestling match, right? You're generating maximal force for an extended period of time. Every minute on the minute, again, a CrossFit thing. Let's say we're doing deadlifts. Every minute on the minute would look like You have 60 seconds to do 5 deadlifts at a specified weight, okay? So you knock out your 5 deadlifts, say it takes you 20 seconds, you have 40 seconds to rest, and at the start of the next minute, you have to do another 5. Say it takes you 30 seconds this time because you're tired, then you only have 30 seconds to rest. So then the third time it takes you 45 seconds because you're more tired, and then 15 to rest, okay? You can see how that would be a good workout. Reps for time is the same thing, okay? And then as a finisher, you want to focus on maybe some often neglected muscles, okay? Your lumbopelvic complex are all the muscles in your hips and lower back, okay? Oftentimes these muscles are neglected, okay? So like I was talking about your hip abductors, your TFL, the muscles on the outside of your legs, the muscles on the inside of your legs. You know, the machine you see at the gym where like the girls are sitting there and like, yeah, the one where you're doing this, right? Okay, so that's actually a really valuable workout. I would do it with a band instead of on the machine. It's a little bit better. But what I would like to do with the athletes that I train is I'll have them put a band on their ankle and I'll have them do hip flexion, hip extension, hip adduction, and hip abduction, okay? A little bit of a mouthful, but those 4 directions, that solidifies your hip joint, and a lot of times you'll prevent a lot of injuries by solidifying the hip joint. Were you gonna say something?
Is there like a compound workout for that?
A lot of times those muscles that you're hitting are pretty small. It's hard to hit them with just like a bench press or
It's
something.
just better to do that and isolate some more.
Yeah, so you can really focus in on it and hit it hard. They do contribute to certain lifts, like they may need accessory muscle, but the prime mover is always going to be one of the large muscle groups, like your quads or whatever. Rotator cuffs, this is a little bit more for baseball players, but still valid. This movement here, banded pull aparts, strengthens your upper back. Again, with the reverse hypers and Nordics. Again, isometric core work, a leg raise, you lay on your back, you lift your legs up off the floor. I'm sure you've all done those. Okay, that's again isometric work for your core. It's more stabulatory than moving, right? Farmer carry sled work, we talked about that. Okay, questions on programming modalities or workout finishers? Cool. How much time do we have left? Not a lot. 5 minutes. So yeah, this is what I was talking about with the hip complex, pull parts, the reverse hyper. That's a better illustration of it. You're on some kind of machine and you're lifting your heels up towards the sky. Training frequency, okay, this is something I was going to talk about, what kind of goes along with the weight cutting, okay? So out of season, you definitely want to stick with the 4 times a week, 4+ times a week to gain muscle. Like I said, use the other 2 days, 2-3 days, however many days you want to work out in a week for active recovery, stretching, do a massage, go to the sauna, cold bath, take a jog, whatever, okay? So out of season, definitely focus on the 4 times a week. However, in-season training is a little bit more of a different beast, right? How many times do you guys wrestle in a given week? A lot, right? Okay. So you've got a lot of different competitions you got to prepare for. You know, maybe you have a dual Tuesday and a tournament Saturday, and you've got to make weight for both of those. You have a tournament on Saturday, you wrestle 4 or 5 matches, and you feel like you're hit by a train, right? Been there. So the human body needs to be able to recover. So after a long season, how do you feel? You probably feel burnt out, you probably feel tired, you probably feel like you want to take a nap. Halfway through the season, first day. So it's always been a concern, a question of coaches as to how am I going to mix in weight training with my athletes when they're already competing multiple times a week, they've already got practice that they got to go to. Practice. So it's always been a little bit of a conundrum. And so what they've seen in the past is they would lift weights really, really heavy leading up into the season, try and get them to peak strength for day 1 of the season, and then just try and maintain that level of conditioning throughout the season. Now, what that led to is a lot of injuries at the beginning of the season and then again at the end of the season. Because when your body goes through that change of stimuli where it goes from just lifting weights to competing in sport, it's very, very different. The body doesn't have a lot of time to react and adjust. And so you see a lot of injuries at the beginning of the season and a lot at the end because they hadn't been lifting weights and it was just wear and tear on the body. Okay? So a couple of years ago, I mean, this is a different sport. I don't know if you guys are basketball fans or not. The Phoenix Suns, what? Suns, no?
No,
So, Phoenix Suns made a run to the NBA Finals, and their strength coach is a guy named Corey Schlesinger, kind of a mouthful. This guy is on another level. I listen to him on podcasts and stuff. He knows his stuff, okay? So, his solution to the problem was more of a microdose approach. And so, what he would do is they would have very, very heavy days and very, very low days, okay? Peaks and valleys, okay? The high days, the very, very intense days, would be game days, okay? What he would do is on a game day, he would attach a short 20 to 30 minute weightlifting session on game day, okay? And so oftentimes what this would look like is, you know, their basketball team, they'd have a shoot around in the morning and the game at night, you know, 5, 6, 7 p.m., whatever. And so they either attach it to the beginning of the end of the shoot around or probably the end of the game. Okay, short 20, 30 minute weightlifting session after competition or on the same day. So what that led to is, like I said, you have a really, really intense day where you have shoot around, you have lift, and a game. But then the day after that, all you have is, you know, a couple hours of practice, body gets a little bit more of a chance to rest or recover. Okay? So this is something you guys could possibly try and integrate as you're in season, right? Get in a weight, get in a lift on a competition day or on a heavy day or whatever, and then not lift on the other days. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Gives your body time to recover. I don't know if I have this slide explaining that. Yeah. And so the result of the Phoenix Suns using this programming system was that they had guys, and they had a couple older players. I don't know if you guys know Chris Paul, he's a pretty old dude. He's their point guard. They were setting strength PRs going into the playoffs. Okay, so they're peaking, they're feeling their best, they're feeling strong going into the playoffs when all the other teams are feeling like garbage because they've been through a 70 whatever game season. Okay, so peaking at the right time. So training frequency in the off season, just to recap, as often as possible, 4, 5, 6 days a week. In season, it's a little more touchy. This is not gospel. This is a suggestion that you can try, see how it works. Short 30-minute sessions on competition days and don't lift again on the other days. Questions on microdosing and in-season training?
Do you want to like train hard before your competition? Or?
So it depends. You can try it different ways. So this team, this hasn't been extensively studied or anything, but they did both, right? You know, maybe a couple days they had a workout in the morning, and then a couple different days they had a workout at night. That's not to say they were killing themselves in the gym, okay, but it was a good, you know, get a good blow, get a good intense session, and then eat a decent meal, and then go compete. Okay. Any other questions on? Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions on this? Okay. Q variables. Okay, so when you're programming, these are the things you're going to manipulate to change the intensity of your workout. Okay, reps, sets, rest time. Just note the heavier the load, the longer your rest time needs to be. 90% plus, you're looking at 2 to 5 minutes. Okay, to max out at least 4 minutes. If you're trying to get really intense, you lower the rest periods down, but you have to work weights as well. Time under tension. That's basically holding a playing time under tension. Just means the muscle is contracted and it just holds there. Intensity is defined as the percentage of 1 rep max. Yeah, so basically when you're writing your program, you sit down and say, okay, this is going to be my training program for the office. How am I going to do it? So you pick your number of sets, you pick your number of reps, you pick your load, your intensity, how heavy it is, decide how long you're going to rest, and how many reps total you're going to do, and how long the rep is going to take. That makes sense? It's a lot, I know, but these are things you need to consider when you're writing a workout, okay? There's a lot more that can go into a workout to make it more efficient than just 3 sets of 8 or 10 Okay, I think this is one of the last slides. Commonly held misconceptions about weight training, especially heavyweight training, okay? We already talked about a couple. First one is a misconception. They'll say power lifters or weightlifters would reduce my range of motion. It'll make me muscle bound, it'll make me tight, it'll make me stiff, reduce my mobility. I won't be able to move. The wrestler needs to be able to move freely, correct? Now, that is entirely untrue. Not stretching correctly is what makes you immobile, okay? So I took a couple college classes on Olympic weightlifting. Remember you were talking about the snaps and stuff? And with Olympic weightlifting, you have to be extremely mobile. You have to be at a level of mobility that most people aren't. And ever since doing that, you know, I've been lifting heavier weights and I've been more flexible than I've ever been in my life, okay? So those two are not correlated, not at all. Again, what you're talking about, you know, maybe you're scared you're gonna grow your weight class if you lift weights too much, okay? And again, if you're putting on muscle weight and you're going up, good. If you went to McDonald's and you go up a weight, bad, okay? There's a difference between getting stronger and more able as a competitor to wrestle and compete and do better than letting your team and your coach down, yourself down, because you just didn't know how to manage your diet. Okay? At this level of college wrestling, I imagine you guys know how to manage your diet. At least well enough to make weight at this point, okay? So, but yeah, you can still lift heavy in season and manage your caloric input and output and stay at your weight class. Makes sense?
Yeah.
Questions on that?
No questions.
Yeah.
So, I've heard that putting up like weight, like muscle, it gets more tired because like when you're wrestling, you know, it's more like wrestling, you know, it's at a fast pace. Like muscle takes up a lot of like air. Or
It's heavy. So
yeah.
you're saying muscle is heavier than fat, so that extra weight might make me slow.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're
Like
saying?
it'll get you gassed out. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So here's the thing: that muscle, if it's stronger, it's going to be carrying itself. So the muscle, it's not like a rock. You know, it's not like you're wrestling with a bag of rocks. Okay, that muscle is doing stuff for you. It's pushing, it's pulling. So it's not like it's just weighing you down and not doing anything. It's contributing to your movements. And as far as speed goes, the lack of speed you're talking about, that's why we work on speed and power. Remember the two days, day 3 and 4, are speed and power days. You're training your body to move quickly and efficiently. Yeah.
What if you only worked on speed?
If you only worked on speed,
Yeah.
you're not going to be as strong. Okay. So the point of what we're talking, you can absolutely focus on just getting faster. Okay. That's absolutely something you can do, and just focus on getting faster. But here's the thing: all things equal, technique, conditioning, speed, athletic ability, stronger guys are going to win. Okay. So if you just want to train speed, that's a whole different conversation. Kind of our purpose today is getting stronger as a wrestler. Okay? So we can actually have a speed conversation. It's just not what we're doing today. Okay? That makes sense?
I have
Yeah.
a question on that. So like, people say like when you're like squatting like heavy weight like repeatedly and then your knees start hurting, you're saying because you're doing it too fast and like too heavy.
Yeah, that's absolutely a cause. So basically, what a lot of times will happen is when people get that knee pain, they're wearing out the cartilage in their joints. And it's because they are lifting too fast, too heavy. So there's a right way to lift heavy, there's a wrong way, right? The correct way is with good form, you're not bouncing, you have the sufficient flexibility and mobility to do the lifts, and you're not overburdening yourself. I'm sure everyone in here has seen the fitness fails of some guy who looks like freaking Dobby, who tries to squat 500 pounds on the Smith machine and it just folds him. Okay, so there's a difference between challenging yourself with going a little bit heavier than you've ever gone before and just throwing on 500 pounds and expecting to be able to squat it, right? So yeah, you can definitely injure yourself if you're not careful, you don't know what you're doing. But if you do know what you're doing and you're careful and you do things with purpose and you're not just, I'm going to go squat 500 pounds a day, it's pretty safe. As safe as anything physical can be, right? Make sense? Yeah. And that's kind of this last thing, you know, I'm going to be injured if I lift heavy. If you lift heavy wrong, yeah, but if you do it right, it's pretty safe.
So it's not necessarily going too fast, because like tired.
Well, going too fast absolutely can be bad, right? Because if you've got weight on your back and you're just slamming down and putting all that pressure on your knees, that's absolutely bad for it. But if you're controlling it, the body's meant to handle loads like that.
Wait, so how can you work at your speed without like hurting yourself then?
What do you mean?
Heavy. Or,
So like you said, like on your heavy days, you would go like 5 to 5, and then like slow days, you said 10.
Yeah, so that's what this modality and that's what this programming system does. Is it allows you to get stronger and faster at the same time. 2 heavy days, 2 speed days. Any other questions, comments?
So like heavy days are like more controlled, and speed is like where you're on like trying to control your speed.
Yeah, it's just more explosive. So on a bench, you know, if I'm benching my max, it's going to be slow and controlled. But if I'm benching 50% of my 1 rep max, you know, on a speed day, I'm going to be focused on exploding that up as hard as I can, because I'm strong enough, it's light enough, I can push that weight quick and powerfully, and it's not going to hurt me. Right?
So it's not necessarily down, it's more about.
It's both. You know, it's learning to harness the eccentric portion. Because what happens is, think of your muscles like rubber bands. Energy is stored in your muscles on the way down, and then it gets released on the way back up. Okay, so learning to harness that and then pop it back up.
so on a fast day,
Explosively.
we were benching, you go down slow and then explode up, or do you want to go?
So if you're slamming it down on your chest, you're gonna break your ribs. Okay, you need to learn how to harness it, right? And there is something to be said for varying the speed at which you descend, but the focus is gonna be on the concentric portion and pushing that weight. Okay. Any other questions? Good questions. All good questions. Okay.
Ooh, you should talk to the AD about getting ropes, like, you know those ropes
Yeah. So me and the guy, I'm a personal trainer at the gym in town. And me and Ryan, the guy who owns the gym, we talked to him and we gave him a laundry list of stuff to get for the gym. Okay. So to wrap up, we don't have a ton of time. If you're interested in learning more about any of this stuff, like I said, I'm a personal trainer. I work at the gym in town. The guy who owns it is the athletic trainer here, Ryan Carpenter. You guys might have met him. Okay.
Wait, which gym?
Podium, it's right behind Woody's.
Right next to the complex?
Yeah, right behind the complex. Right behind the complex. It's appointment only. It's not like you can just walk in with a membership. It's a personal training studio, basically.
Oh.
Okay, sports specific. If you're interested in personal training, learning about any more of these compound lifts, the Olympic lifting, we taught a class entirely on Olympic lifting in college. Stuff like that, reach out to me. Another thing that I want to give you guys is if you like what you see here with the conjugate system, the conjugate method, reach out to me. I'll leave Coach my number or my email or whatever. Reach out to me and we'll talk. I'll give you a call or whatever. We'll set up a program customized to you and your goals for free. We'll do it all. Yeah, just reach out to me if that's something you're interested in. Okay. Any questions beyond this?
You train here too?
Here at the college, not yet. That's one of my goals is to get hired on as a strength coach here at the college. We'll see if it ever happens. Okay, so we're gonna head down to the weight room.
What's the best shoes to work out with? I hear the flat foot shoes are.
I hear no shoes.
Well, that's good too.
Plastic shoes?
But then they drop.